It's Sweet 16 time in the NCAA men's basketball tournament, and everybody is talking about Richard Frazier's picks from last week. My man went 3 for 5, 60%, which is well above the national average when it comes to handicapping. So back with me today on Handicap Hustle is my friend and co-host, Richard Frazier. Richard, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Todd. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. Listen, Richard, everybody's talking about Handicap Hustle. Everybody's talking about last week's show. They loved the show. They loved the picks that you had. You came right out and said, look, I have 5 picks. I have one that's a lock, San Diego State. They're right there. They won that first round game as you had predicted. You had a couple that were near misses, but not a big deal, though, because realistically, you did great, all things considering, because we had so many other big upsets that took place. But all your blue bloods are out, right? Oregon, Auburn. What, you have Kentucky's out. What are we going to do? What do you think for this weekend?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, March Madness, some people may view this as March Sadness. The fact of the matter is that all 4 number 1 seeds advanced to the Sweet 16, all 4 number 2 seeds advanced. What do we have mixed in with there? Well, we got 2 5 seeds, a 6 seed, 1 11 seed, which was the Cinderella I picked last week, which is NC State. But
let's go, Pack.
Can you even consider NC State a Cinderella team, being that they come from an ACC conference school?
Well, okay, I see what you're saying. You're saying because they're from the pretty boy ACC conference, and you're actually going to say NC State, they're not really an underdog. Are they wearing the slipper? But they are a double-digit team. Yes, they have won 2 national championships in their history for their program. But still, there's something about it. You know, that Jim Valvano-esque, you just have that, you're cheering for him. They're rooting for him, but you also have some big powerhouses that are in front of them. So we'll have to see what happens. True. So let's talk about that, though. In the conferences, 4 ACC schools advanced to the Sweet 16. 25% of the field that's left is from the ACC, which has historically always been the best conference. But I'm certain you had a lot of prognosticators, probably including yourself, that went into this tournament not thinking the ACC would be as strong. But what do you think?
Well, I did think the ACC would be strong. I was shocked that ACC didn't get more teams in the tournament. I told you there was a Pitt deserved to be in. Maybe another school from the ACC. They probably deserved at least 5, if not 6. We can also say the same thing about the Big East Conference. They only got 3 teams in. They were projected to get 6 teams in, and all 3 teams that they got into the tournament are in the Sweet 16 as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest disappointment is the SEC. You had 4 teams that dropped in the SEC in the first round. I mean, that's incredible. You still have Tennessee that's in there, Alabama. But let's be realistic. I mean, if one of those 2 teams makes it into Final Four weekend, I will be stunned. Maybe you have some picks. You have some thoughts on that later on in the show. But I have to say, when I look at the SEC, I would think those guys really have to start beefing up their out-of-conference schedule, because right now it's just not there. They're playing a lot of cupcakes, and I think it's showing in March.
Well, that's what some of the coaches, including Rick Pitino, has been saying about the Big East, that the Big 12 got the most amount of teams in the tournament, and so Pitino's complaining about that. What's going on is they're scheduling their non-conference games against lesser teams and blowing them out, as opposed to scheduling tougher teams and playing a tight game against it, running the risk of getting a loss. That all calculates into the metrics that the committee uses to determine who's in the tournament. So. Yeah. The Big 12, with the most teams in the tournament, where are they sitting now? Yeah. Nowhere.
You're right about that. Look at the Mountain West. I mean, again, another disappointment. Very surprised by this. And it does make you wonder if the selection committee really knows what the hell they're doing, because they're picking these teams. They always seem to get it wrong. I mean, it looks like NC State should have been seated a lot higher than they are right now. And I don't think it really matters anyway. But at the end of the day, when you start looking at some of these seedings and how they happen, I wonder how much politics plays into the actual picks. Probably a discussion for another show, but it does lead you to wonder, why did the Big East turn into the Big Least with only those three selections?
That is true. Yeah, the Mountain West is still sitting with San Diego State, and I will say our hometown UNLV Rebels are still alive in the NIT tournament. So
Love that. Running Rebels, Larry Johnson time. I like that. So let's talk before, because in the second block, we're going to talk about this week's picks. I know that's what everybody wants to hear. And so we're going to force you to actually stay, listen, and watch the commercials as well. But let's talk about last week's games, your last week's picks. You did find 3 out of 5 decent numbers. I have to say, why don't you tell the audience where it went wrong on those other 2 games?
well, I thought BYU would put up a better showing. I thought that they were stronger. Again, a Big 12 school playing a Big 10 conference schedule against my hometown Duquesne Dukes, and when your head and your heart don't match up, you probably should avoid it. But I just thought that BYU was that much stronger than Duquesne, that they would have easily won that game, and it just didn't happen. The other matchups, I knew Gonzaga would take care of McNeese State. I knew Kansas would take care of Samford, and Alabama took care of College of Charleston, and
Yeah.
of course San Diego State took care of UAB. But the one of those didn't get over the number. But it's more about money line on some of these games. I know in the first round, you do have some spreads that are a little larger than you generally do at this stage of the tournament, but yeah, I mean, we didn't break the bank last week, but we did okay. But it's
Yeah.
going to be even tougher this week.
Of course it is. It's supposed to be tougher, but you're the expert and you are our featured prognosticator. And that's why the Handicap Hustle program has even been developed, because you are the superstar. I mean, let's face facts here. And you do have a track record of winning, which, by the way, we always encourage the audience to go to phrazewins.com. It's FRAZ wins.com. Richard is there. He's offers his picks, and it's not just about basketball. It's also, or college basketball. It's also about the NBA, and obviously with football as well. And I'm trying to get him to do some lacrosse, but that's a whole other program later
We're
on.
working on that. We also post a lot of information on @FraziWins on all social platforms. So
Oh yeah, and I know you're a big TikToker right now too, Richard. I tell you, you're kicking ass on that side. So real quick, before we let go of last week's games, I got to ask you though, were there any games that really surprised you? I thought the Houston going into overtime game was a surprise to me, but then it also makes you wonder, are they truly battle tested to make it all the way to Championship Monday? But were there any big surprises that you saw?
well, I mean, we did have some legitimate Cinderellas win in that first round. I mean, Yale, Duquesne, Grand Canyon, James Madison, although a lot of people had them pointed out as a potential upset winner, Oakland. So, it started off good enough, but once these teams got to the second round, they lost their mojo and faded away. But like I said, looking at the 16 teams that are left, it's pretty much where you would expect it to be. Basically, the only strong team that's missing out of this group is Kentucky. So
Yeah, I have to say Kentucky is the big one. I thought Yale beating Auburn was a bit of a surprise for me as well. I was expecting Bruce Pearl to have his team really energized for it. It was almost seemed like they had a bit of a letdown that they had to play Yale and they never could catch up. They were always
Yeah.
behind in that one, and that wasn't good. Seeing JMU beat Wisconsin, I mean, knocking off a Big Ten team, huge for recruiting for the Dukes. I think it's going to really help them down the line in years to come. They might not make the tournament again next year, but you'll definitely see them back in a couple of Marches from now. That's for sure. But yeah,
Mhm.
some nice, colorful surprises that were there, but that's typical of the NCAA tournament right now, and I think that's why everybody loves it. But Richard, the time has come. Everybody wants to know what your picks are going to be, but we're going to talk about that right after the break. So with us today at Handicap Hustle, Richard Frazier. The whole show is about Richard Frazier, and you definitely want to check out his picks at phrazewins.com as well. But he's going to tell you what to pick for this week in the Sweet 16. So please stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. All right, that's good.
Ready to up your game and learn more about the thrilling world of sports betting? Introducing Double Down with Breslow, the ultimate podcast about the business of sports gambling. Join me, James Breslow, and a long list of expert guests as we dive into the art and science of the sports betting industry. Evolving regulations, technology enhancements, and the meteoric rise in the number of players makes this sector the fastest growing and most intriguing in the world. Unlock the business secrets from many of the industry's most recognizable C-suite executives, including famous odds makers and influencers. Every episode of Double Down with Breslow is packed with insider tips, deeply skilled analysis, and in-depth discussions. Don't miss out on the ultimate resource for mastering the business of sports betting. Listen to Double Down with Breslow on the Evergreen Podcast Network or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's Double Down with Breslow, the business of sports betting podcast.
Welcome back to Handicap Hustle on Biz Talk Today TV, BTT as we love to call it around these parts. And with me today, Richard Frazier, the prognosticator of prognosticators from Las Vegas. He is joining us. He goes into these casinos, he's smoking his cigar, he's drinking his bourbon, and everybody, you just go around, you're like, girls, gather around. Everybody comes running over to you because they don't want to talk to you. They just want to know what you're going to pick. And that's why our audience is here today. Richard, there are 8 games this week. 8 games, 4 on Thursday, 4 on Friday with the Sweet 16. You're going to be picking a handful of these games. The floor is yours. Tell the audience what you like.
Well, I have to tell you, Todd, that when you look at these matchups, and I applied my algorithm to all of them, the variance was very, very small. So it forced me to go into a little more of a handicapper mode. And what I mean by that is that I was taught a long time ago that you're going to win more often than you don't if you could find value in the line. And so what I did was, in breaking down all these matchups, I basically been following the money because that's what the books have to do to balance out the money. Is they have to make line adjustments if the money gets too lopsided. Now, there's 4 games that the money is extremely lopsided on, and there's 3 games that the money's pretty much balanced, and then there's 1 game that the money is going different ways in terms of the amount of bets made on a team and the amount of money made on a team. And it's about 80% of the bets are made on one side, but 80% on the money is on the other. And that would be the matchup between Marquette and NC State.
Marquette, NC State, 7 o'clock Friday night. Everybody's talking about NC State. Everybody's pulling for NC State. Nobody dislikes Marquette. I mean, Marquette is not a villain type of team. They don't have that culture. But
Right.
I would think most of the country would love to see NC State advance. Tell us, what's everybody leaning towards? I'm going to guess the money. Big money's going to Marquette. but you tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, the amount 80% of the bets are on NC State, but about 80% of the money's on Marquette. So
Okay.
I mean that we have a split decision on that one. So I'm going to avoid that one. I'm looking at the four matchups where I see 80 to 90% of the money is currently on a certain side. Does that mean that's the side I'm taking? No, I'm a contrarian. But what I think that does is, like I said, if there's too much money on one side, the book is forced to adjust the number to attract money to the other side. So the four matchups where the money is extremely lopsided, one is the Tennessee Creighton game. So there's so much money on Tennessee, I believe that they're going to have to raise the point spread on Creighton. So I
hold
think,
it back up here. What's the spread on this game? Oh, I have it. Tennessee's favored by 2.5 points. That's a bucket. That's not even a field goal.
True. Yeah, I didn't have that one written down here on my page. So
that game is scheduled for 10 o'clock on Friday night. It's the final game in the Sweet 16 round. And I could see why Tennessee, but don't you agree that it's more like a brand premium? People will pick Tennessee because it's Tennessee. Everybody knows about Tennessee. If you ask 10 people or gamblers where Creighton is located, I doubt half of them will even know.
Well, true. I mean, Tennessee obviously being an SEC school and Creighton being a Big East school. Yeah, and the money proves that with 85-90% of the money being on Tennessee. But yeah, I'm not saying run out and bet it right now, but at some point the books are going to need to balance that money out a little bit. So the money is definitely lopsided towards Tennessee. So I'm saying take Creighton plus the points. Another matchup that's
I want to offer a little comment on that. I love this pick because the SEC laid an egg in the first round of the tournament. 4 teams knocked out, including blue blood Kentucky. So when I see that, I think that's weakness for the SEC, and I would be shocked if they get out of the Sweet 16 round. Alabama, I don't know who you're picking. I don't think they're advancing, and I certainly don't like Tennessee in this game either. So Creighton is the way to go. That's your first pick. Give us your second one, Richard.
Okay, the other game where we have an extremely lopsided amount of money is the Houston-Duke matchup. Everybody seems to love Houston in this game. I know Houston has had an incredible regular season, an incredible first 2 games of the tournament. But again, coming out of a smaller conference against a battle-tested Duke team that's been there, done that, I'm saying take Duke plus the points.
Let me explain something to you, and this is for the audience. You don't bet against Duke. I mean, it's like betting against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. You just don't do it. Duke has it. They've always had the X factor. They're always going to be in it all the way to the end. Even if they're not in it and they lose, it's a rarity, and everybody talks about it for 3 days after the game. There's no chance. I would say Duke all the way on this one. I like this pick a lot. And after Houston went into overtime and barely got out of it last week, I'm pulling for the Blue Devils.
Okay. The third one I'm looking at, again, because of the lopsided amount of money bet on them, is the UConn-San Diego State matchup. Now, this one has the largest number in terms of spread, where San Diego State is plus 11. It may have to go even higher to attract money because everybody thinks UConn is just going to walk their way all the way to the final in this tournament. So I'm saying take San Diego State plus the biggest amount of points you can get on them.
Another great
I'm not
pick.
saying that San Diego State's going to win this game outright, but I think they're going to play a tougher game against UConn than people think.
I think you're right about that. I'm picking San Diego State. We all know the Padres aren't going to do anything this year in baseball. So this is the only thing they have going for them. Yeah, you could tell me that the San Diego Chargers aren't even there. What am I doing? I'm stumbling over my thoughts. I have to think you're right about this. I like UConn. I like the story of UConn, but realistically, I have to go with San Diego State on this one because I don't know if UConn is hungry enough anymore. But we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, and the last matchup I'm looking at is the North Carolina-Alabama matchup. Everybody in the world's got their money on North Carolina so
Of
far.
course.
That number's only sitting at 4 right now, but I look for that number to move to 5, possibly 6. I think this is going to be a much tighter game than people think. I'm saying take Alabama plus the points. I'm not saying Alabama's going to win the game outright, but I do think it's going to be a tight game and Alabama will cover it.
Okay, let me explain something to you, okay? Alabama is a football school. They're not going to win. Nate Oates is great at offense, horrible at defense. UNC, all they need is a few stops. If they get a few stops, then they could score. So I think North Carolina wins this in double digits. I know you're the handicapper on this one, but I'm giving you my 2 cents, Richard. And I'm telling you, I went to Maryland. When we were in the ACC, UNC and Duke were always the tops. They still are the tops. I have to say, UNC, the Tar Heels are going to take this and they're going to take it big. We'll see, though. It's on Thursday night at 7:30.
Okay, we'll have our own side wager on that one.
You know what? It's 9:30. I sit corrected.
That's all right. Well,
all right. Now, hold it. You got it. Now, last week you gave the audience a bonus. You gave everyone a fifth, a pick, a sure lock. Do you have any other games that you might be looking at?
Remaining. The only other game that I'm looking at that could possibly get in the mix is the Illinois-Iowa State game.
This is a snoozer.
I don't know how many people care about this particular matchup, but the fact is that Iowa State being a 2 seed, Illinois being a 3 seed, the spread is 1.5 on this game. And again, if I had to go one way or the other, I would take Illinois plus the 1.5 with the slight upset in this game.
So. Okay, Illinois. I would think Illinois too. Big Ten team makes a lot of sense. Illinois did have a very nice season this year. As far as fan interest goes, it's specifically scheduled at 10:09 on Thursday night. The East Coast will be tuning out and watching CSI Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Nobody's going to care about this game at all, but we'll read about it the next day. And I have to say, I'm going to agree with you on this one as well. I can see Illinois taking this game, and we'll see how it plays out. But now, is that a lock? Is this a lock, or is this just maybe a coin flip?
There is no such thing as a lock. The only thing that's a lock is that most people in Iowa right now care about Caitlin Clark in Iowa's women's basketball team.
Exactly. The entire state doesn't even care about Iowa State. They only care about Caitlin Clark. I have to agree with that. Definitely the hottest story, and really in sports altogether. It's a great story, and we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the year. So I'll just say that's a coin flip lock. We'll see how it plays out. But those are the big games. So we get your four picks with the fifth bonus one. We'll see how it happens over the next couple of days. But I got to tell you, Richard, then you have the grade 8 matchup Saturday and Sunday, which obviously ties into the Final Four next week. You have to have a Handicap Hustle show next week because the audience is going to be screaming for it. And you need to give everybody your picks on those 2 games in the Final Four. What do you say? You up for it?
I definitely am up for it. Not to mention, I'm still alive in both of the brackets I have in play. So
holy moly! Well, so am I. I have Duke versus UNC in my championship bracket. We'll see how it plays out. But I love those 2 teams. I think they're going to end up there in the final. And if that's the case, next week's show is going to be out of control. It's going to be awesome. We'll have a lot of fun. That's for sure.
Looking forward to it.
You got that right. So listen, we're going to close it out there. We have Richard's picks. We're going to have them in the description as well. Check them out. Leave us your comments. Share the show. Check out Richard at phrasewins.com. And also follow him on TikTok He is the hottest thing to hit TikTok since Kim Kardashian. You definitely want to see what he's doing on there because he has all kinds of surprises for you, not just with the NCAAs, but also with NBA picks. Definitely a must-watch. You'll definitely want to check it out. So, on behalf of Richard Frazier, I am Todd Schoenberger. Thank you once again for watching Handicap Hustle on BTT, and we'll see you right here next week. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. That was great.
I want you to smash that like button.